It's only been 2 months since my 2-year relationship with Lori ended. She dumped me because, according to her, we weren't moving forward. I couldn't understand why there was such a rush. After all, we were only in our 20s and everything was going great. Why risk ruining everything by getting married, right? Well, she didn't think so and handed me the goodbye papers. I missed her dearly, but honestly, it intensified a lot of the feelings I was having. I had been playing the field for the last couple months and was having a great time, although I felt a little empty at times. I've been sleeping about 3 times a week. Granted, Lori and I used to do it 5 or 6 times a week, so that was a step down, but at least those hookups were without commitment. Tonight I was alone, sitting at the local sports bar, eating wings and beer and watching the first quarter of the game between the Colts and Texans. There was no score, and the game had been pretty boring so far. Marks? Only one person had ever called me Marky. I looked up and saw a face I hadn't seen in 5 years. "Marky, it's you, oh my God!" She threw herself into my lap and sank into me in a kiss that threatened to suck every last molecule of air out of my lungs. But she was always like that. "Wow, Rayanne, how are you?" "I'm fine, and now I'm even better. It's been too long. What are you doing?" "Nothing. Just eating dinner and watching a shitty soccer game. What about you?" "I was just walking by and saw you. I had to see if it was you. Why don't we grab a coffee or something?" "Sure." We walked out of the sports bar and stopped at Grinder's Coffee a couple doors down. Rayanne and I met in college, and I fell in love with her at first sight. She had long blonde hair and a beautiful, trim body. In the first semester of junior year, we were assigned to the same group to work on a project. We instantly hit it off and spent the night at our group's second project meeting, partying till we dropped, after the others had left, of course. That should have been my first clue. We fell in love hard and fast. I'd like to say we were inseparable, but that's not the realities of college life. We each had other classes and study groups, and I was also working part-time. My folks could handle the expenses just fine, but they wanted me to do a little work myself. As a result, we were apart as much as we were together. Sexually, Rayanne was insatiable. I was usually the one to offer to do something, anything, before just jumping into bed for sex. I didn't want our entire relationship to be built on physical intimacy alone. Things had been great for almost 2 years, and I was planning my proposal as graduation approached. I was at work one night, but was sent home early when one of the cars broke down, and we had to close for repairs. I decided to surprise Rayanne with my sudden appearance, and isn't that always the way? I showed up at her apartment, and upon opening the door, her roommate Tony was immediately wary. She tried to tell me that Rayanne wasn't home, but her car was in the parking lot, and Rayanne never goes anywhere without her car. But I still wasn't about to barge in until I heard an "Oh my God, yes!" from deep inside the apartment. Since it was just the two of them living there, it was either Rayanne or they were letting some other woman have fun in their apartment. I squeezed past Tony, intending to catch her in the act, but she grabbed my arm and tried to stop me. It was so like her to try to reason with me at such an emotional moment. "Mark, she loves you. She really does. She's just trying something before she calms down. You don't want to go there." She was right. I didn't want to go there, but I needed to go there. I continued toward the back wall, and Tony reluctantly let me go. She knew me well enough to know that I wouldn't go on a rampage unless provoked, of course, so she didn't try to stop me again, but there was a look of sadness on her face. I was ready to catch her with a guy. That much was obvious. But I was most definitely not prepared for catching her with 2 of them. The door opening caught their attention, and all 3 of them turned in my direction like cats following a laser pointer. At first, Rayanne just stared at me in shock. I could almost hear her mind saying, "You should be at work." But I have to hand it to her, she didn't say it. After seeing everything I needed to see, I turned around and walked out. I'm pretty sure I heard Marky as I left, but maybe it was my imagination or just wishful thinking. I felt just awful. I really thought we had something, and to find out that Rayanne had just used me, that I was just another guy she'd screwed over, was a huge blow to my ego. Was I really so ignorant that I couldn't understand her? Or did we have an exclusive relationship, but she decided I wasn't enough for her? Suddenly I had doubts about myself as a person, as a man, and certainly as a potential husband. And the worst part was that I still loved her with all my heart. I couldn't even bring myself to talk to her right now. I was sure she would tell me how inadequate I was, so she needed to have sex with someone else. In fact, I was such a disappointment that she needed 2 men to make up for how bad I was. I somehow made it through the last few weeks of school without my grades dropping. She tried to convince me that she really loved me and that she was just having a few experiences before we settled down for the rest of our lives. Yes, that's right, a few experiences. In the interest of complete honesty, she completely ripped all vestiges of dignity and self-esteem from me by informing me that she had slept with me for 6 months. But all of those were, in her opinion, unusual opportunities. Basically, she wanted to experience all these things in her life and couldn't do it by getting married. Consequently, she had to do all of these things, or at least all of the things she was sure I would disagree with, before committing herself to the bonds of marriage. Most, but not all, consisted of more than one at a time. One was a visit to our local adult bookstore and a visit to one of their glory holes. This satisfied her desire for an anonymous sexual encounter. She had no idea who was on the other side of the wall and thinks there may have been several because she didn't think one guy could come around so quickly. In fact, she admitted, the threesome I walked in on was one of her mildest adventures. She also rode trains, did gangbangs, and even participated in a lesbian orgy involving 6 women, although she never once showed any interest in me with other women. She says it was fun and is already trying to figure out how to get me to let another woman into our bed. Oh, to get her to play with him instead of me. She just couldn't get over it, she said. When all was said and done, she insisted that it was all out of her system and she was ready to be my loving, faithful wife. Of course, by this time, my self-esteem and self-worth were completely shot, as was my trust in her. Even though I knew it was the right thing to do, it was still one of the hardest things I had ever done in my life for many reasons. I was still struggling with my sense of self-worth. I fell into a depression that I continued to struggle with on a regular basis. And here she is, 5 years later, looking as beautiful and sexy as ever, and suddenly none of that mattered. She wasn't wearing any rings, I checked, and I was single again. Just meeting her brought back all the feelings of love I had felt for her when we met, and I couldn't wait to find out if she was really ready to be a faithful wife. Oddly enough, the step I couldn't bring myself to take with Lori, I was practically dying to take with Rayanne. We talked about her job, real estate, and my job, benefits coordinator at a local company, reminisced about the good times we'd had together, but it seemed like we were avoiding the status of our relationship. I assumed she noticed my ring finger as I did hers, so perhaps we both thought it was unimportant. We left the coffee shop and headed to a club for some dancing and drinks. The passing years hadn't dampened her energy or her sexuality. More than one guy asked her to dance when we took a break, and she blew every one of them away. I was having a great time, and began to wonder what the future held for me. I quickly paid our bill and we left. She didn't feel comfortable leaving the car, so she followed me to my apartment. No sooner had we entered the entryway than we were already pulling off our clothes and each other. Finally, completely exhausted, we rolled over onto our backs and dozed off. I woke up to Rayanne moving around my bedroom. She was finishing getting dressed and gathering her things. She tried to be quiet but smiled when she saw me get up. She sat on the edge of the bed holding her purse. "I have to go home. Can't you stay?" She smiled at me, reaching for her purse. I guess I shouldn't have been surprised to see her putting rings on her finger, but I was. "I can't. My husband doesn't like me staying out all night." Are you married?" "Yes, for 3 years now." "But what was that? I thought—" She reached for me gently, taking my hand in hers. "It was just sex, baby. Look, Marky, the truth is, I'm a slut. I was a slut before I met you. I was a slut while we were together, and I've been a slut ever since. I just happen to have found a husband who doesn't mind. With any luck, he's spent the night with some hottie himself." I don't understand." "Look, Carl and I are more like good friends than lovers. We met one night, we liked it, and we went out a few more times. Neither of us were cut out for monogamy, but we became very close and decided to get married. I don't love him the way I loved him. Hell, the way I still love you." But when I come home after having sex with some guy, it makes me feel better to have someone around. Have you ever had sex? Oh yeah, I probably get half my sex life from it. Marky, the truth is I just love having sex with new guys. I loved you so much back then, and I couldn't even stay faithful to you even though I tried so hard. It took me a whole year before I finally gave up, but once I did, I couldn't stop anymore. I was hoping I could hide it from you so we could stay together, but I realized you would have found out anyway. I'm sorry for that. I was selfish and I didn't want to lose you. Thank you for tonight, Marky. You'll never know how much it means to me. She snuggled up to me and kissed my cheek. I left my number on your dresser. You're the best person I've ever had, and I wish we could meet again, but I know you might not go for it. I'll be disappointed if you don't call, but I'll understand. I love you, Marky, and I always will. With those words, she walked out of my bedroom, and a few minutes later I heard the front door slam shut. I just sat there bewildered at this unexpected turn of events. I thought we could be together again. I was overwhelmed with all these feelings. I got out of bed and pulled the sheets off, not wanting to smell like sex all night. I threw them in the washing machine and then climbed into the shower. I had the urge, or maybe the need, to rid myself and my surroundings of any trace of Rayanne. As I dressed, I noticed a piece of paper with her phone number on it. I picked it up and studied it for a minute, then came to a decision. I picked up the phone and dialed the number. The phone rang twice before a sleepy voice answered me. Hello? Lori, it's me. Mark? Jesus, do you even know what time it is? Yeah, it's about 3 in the morning. Are you alone? A pause followed and then a sigh. This isn't really any of your business anymore, Mark. You're right. I'm sorry. I just wanted to say, I didn't mean to interrupt what you might be doing. Another sigh. Yes, Mark, I'm alone. What did you want? Can I come to you? We only broke up 2 months ago, Mark. I don't think that would be a good idea right now. Please, Lori. Mark, why don't you give me a call tomorrow and maybe we can set something up so I'm in a better position, okay? Yeah, sure. Okay, whatever you say. I'll call you later. I ended the conversation feeling even worse than before. I don't know what would have happened if Lori hadn't called me back right away. Hello? Is it that important, Mark? I think so. Okay, come over. I'll put the coffee on. I walked out to the car and honestly don't remember how I got there. I had all sorts of thoughts going through my head, but mostly about what I was going to say to her. When I pulled into the parking lot of her apartment complex, I already knew what I was going to do. I knocked, then got down on one knee as she opened the door. Lori Ann Smith, will you marry me? She just stared at me for a minute. I think she was trying to figure out if I was drunk, especially since it was almost 3:30 in the morning and I didn't even have a ring. I guess I was foolish to expect her to immediately say yes and throw herself into my arms. At least she didn't say no. Yet. Before I answer that, Mark, we apparently need to talk. Come inside and sit down. I took a seat at one end of the couch and soon had a cup of coffee in my hands. Lori sat down in the chair across from me. Her long, straight black hair was gathered into a ponytail, and she was dressed in a light pink terry cloth robe. I could see the bottom of one of her nightgowns peeking out. I wondered if she still slept without panties. Okay, Mark. What happened tonight? I ran into Rayanne. The same Rayanne who cheated on you in college. Yes. Then let's get this straight. Did you have sex with her? I hesitated. I wasn't proud of what I'd done, finding myself drawn into the orbit of a woman who'd practically destroyed me. In fact, it was Lori who had done most of the putting me back together that was even worse. Yeah, I'm sorry. Why are you apologizing to me, Mark? You were a single man and you did what single men do. The same thing you've been doing for the past few months. I looked at her, shocked. Don't be surprised. I get reports all the time, whether I want them or not, but I still wonder what you were thinking, considering how it ended the first time. I suppose, she made me feel awful. I felt like her cheating on me was her telling me what she thought of me, and for some reason I needed to get her approval, as silly as that sounds. Did you get it? Sort of. She's been married for 3 years. That took Lori by surprise. For your information, I didn't know about it before we went our separate ways. She married a guy she likes, and she still loves me, but he's okay with her sleeping around because he does it too. So they have an open marriage? More like a marriage of convenience. It's like they're only together to have someone. That's sad. All these years I thought it was about me. I thought I wasn't man enough to make a woman happy, and all this time it was about her, not me. I convinced myself that I was the guy that women would cheat on. I was so afraid it was only a matter of time until... Jesus, Mark, I would never do that to you. Is that why you never committed yourself to me? To us? I'm pretty sure, I said, nodding my head. I was afraid I'd get hurt again, but I was even more afraid of disappointing you. Lori knelt down in front of me, squeezing my hands in hers. Baby, I love you. You can't even imagine how good it felt to hear her call me baby again. I knew for sure I was going to get you, and I was thrilled for you beyond my wildest dreams. I can't believe you held back all this time because some slut cheated on you all those years ago. Pretty pathetic, isn't it? No, baby. It hurts me to think that's how you've treated yourself all this time. Listen to me, Mark. You're a wonderful man. You're going to be a wonderful husband and father. Any woman would be happy to have you. But I don't want any woman, Lori. She stood up, walked to the other end of the room, and stood there for a minute. She stood with her back to me, and all I had to do was wait. Suddenly, she turned to me. Yes. Yes, what? Yes, Mark. I will marry you. I jumped up from the couch and hugged her as tightly as I could. She was so good. Rayanne was slim, but Lori was well built. She wasn't fat, just curvy, and I loved the way she felt in my arms, especially when her lush breasts rested against my chest. I hated to let her go, but alas, something else had to be said. But listen carefully, okay? You need to see some counseling to sort this out, okay? I don't think an epiphany after a sex session with a city bike can be considered proper emotional recovery. Okay, honey, you're absolutely right. And no sex until you've had your checkup. I can only imagine what that woman gave you. I'll get tested tomorrow. Can I stay here tonight? Can you keep your hands to yourself? I promise. Okay, go ahead. We'll tell everyone tomorrow. Mom keeps telling me to give you another chance. She'll be thrilled. She always liked me. A very brief epilogue. Fortune was smiling on me. I took the tests, and the night I got the results, I found myself between Lori's legs. Everything was business as usual for us, and I knew I was where I was supposed to be. Marriage planning began the day after she accepted my proposal, but the date was set a year later, and I was explicitly told that the wedding would be delayed if I didn't fulfill my part of the counselor agreement. The threat was unnecessary as I wanted to get my life together as best I could, and I willingly participated. I actually met Rayanne again about 3 months after the wedding, or rather, Lori and I did. We were having dinner at a local steakhouse when she and her hubby walked in, and they were each on a date. I thought they were just out with another couple, but soon realized I was wrong. They saw us on the way in and stopped at our table to meet us. But when they sat down at the table, Rayanne was already busy with another guy and Carl with another woman. To each his own, I guess. And the steak dinner was in honor of the news that Lori was pregnant. We went to the doctor that day and got the final confirmation. I was looking forward to the beginning of the life that now lay before me, and even more so to the private celebration that Lori promised to throw later. Life is good.